Have you ever felt like you are on a financial treadmill? You work hard, you save every month, and you cut back on your lifestyle. Yet your bank balance seems to stay exactly where it was. It is a frustrating and lonely feeling, especially when you're over the age of 50 and the clock is ticking toward retirement. But what if I told you the biggest reason most people never reach financial freedom is not because they lack money, but because they lack momentum? Think about a space rocket sitting on a launch pad. To break free from the gravity of Earth, it has to burn 80% of its fuel just to move the first few hundred feet. The engine roars, the ground shakes, and an immense amount of energy is expended. But to an outside observer, the rocket is barely moving. Building wealth in your 50s and 60s follows this exact same law of physics. Most people quit their retirement plans just before their financial engines reach the velocity needed for liftoff. They see the struggle, they see the slow progress, and they assume the system is broken. But the truth is, the system is not broken. It is just fighting the gravity of your current expenses and the drag of inflation. Today, we are going to talk about how you can use the next 10 years to build a self-sustaining financial engine that works harder than you do. We will look at why your early progress feels invisible and how to cross the tipping point where your money finally starts to double on its own. Let's begin by looking at the reality of retirement in the United States today. Data from the Federal Reserve shows that the median retirement savings for a household headed by someone around age 62 is between $185,000 and $200,000. For many, this number feels like a failure because they have heard they need millions to survive. However, $200,000 is a solid foundation, but it is often trapped by what I call the momentum gap. The momentum gap is the period between your consistent effort and the visible results in your account. During this stage, your portfolio is small, so even a 10% return only adds a few $1,000s. You look at that gain and compare it to the cost of a new car or a medical bill, and it feels insignificant. This is where human psychology becomes your worst enemy. We are biologically wired to seek immediate feedback and quick rewards. When we do not see our account balance exploding, our brain tells us to stop saving and enjoy the money now. But stopping your investments during this phase is like shutting off the rocket engines seconds before the craft leaves the atmosphere. You waste all the fuel you have already spent, and you fall back to Earth. To survive the momentum gap, you must redefine what progress looks like. Progress is not a high balance in year one. It is the accumulation of thrust in your financial engine. Now let's talk about the invisible enemy that is trying to pull your rocket back down, inflation. Inflation acts like atmospheric resistance, pushing back against every dollar you save. If inflation is sitting at 3%, your money must first beat that headwind before you see any real gain in altitude. This is why many retirees feel like they are losing ground even when they are investing. To fight this, you need to understand the Rule of 72. The Rule of 72 is a simple mathematical shortcut to see how long it takes for your money to double. You take 72 and divide it by your average annual return. If you earn a 10% return on a broad market index like the S&P 500, your money will double roughly every 7 years. This is where the magic of the 10-year flight plan becomes real. The first doubling is always the hardest and the slowest because you are doing all the heavy lifting with your contributions. But once you cross that first threshold, the second doubling happens much faster because you have a larger base of capital working for you. Imagine you have managed to save $500,000 by age 50. If you let that money sit and compound at a 10% average return, it will grow to $1 million by the time you are 57. If you wait just 7 more years, that $1 million becomes $2 million. Notice that the second $1 million arrived with zero extra effort from your side. It was the math doing the work that you used to do with your labor. This is the tipping point where your money officially becomes your colleague. It is a second version of you that works 24 hours a day, without breaks, without stress, and without a salary. But to get there in a 10-year window, you must align 3 critical forces: offense, defense, and consistency. Offense is your ability to generate financial fuel. If you are starting later in life, you may need to increase your thrust by finding side income or consulting work in your field of expertise. Defense is your efficiency, which means keeping your lifestyle spending stable even as your income rises. The biggest mistake people make in their 50s is lifestyle creep. They get a raise at work and immediately buy a luxury car or a larger home. This increases the weight of your rocket and requires even more fuel to stay in the air. True financial offense means widening the gap between what you earn and what you spend. The wider that gap, the faster your momentum builds. Another key strategy to protect your flight plan is inflation control. A practical method is to increase the amount you invest each year by at least 3%. This mirrors the pace of inflation and ensures that your real investment power does not shrink over time. It is a small adjustment, but over a decade, it adds a powerful layer of protection to your portfolio. Now, let's look at the actual math of a 10-year transition. Suppose you save $400 a month for 10 years and never change that amount. You would invest $48,000 plus whatever returns the market provides. Now compare that to someone who saves 10% of their income and increases their savings by 5% every year as their salary grows. Their contributions would rise from $400 to over $650 a month by the end of the decade. By the time they reach their target retirement date, they have significantly more thrust in their engine. They have shortened the time it takes to reach the next doubling period. As you approach the end of your 10-year plan, you also need to consider your landing zone. For many retirees, housing is the largest expense, often taking up 36% of their budget. If you can eliminate or drastically reduce your housing costs, your $500,000 portfolio goes much further. Strategies like downsizing to a smaller home or moving to an area with a lower cost of living can act like a parachute for your retirement. It reduces the amount of income you need to withdraw, which allows your remaining investments to keep growing. Remember that the goal of this journey is not just a high number on a screen. The goal is freedom. It is the point where your finances operate independently of your daily labor. Reaching that point requires a shift in mindset, from seeking short-term wins to building long-term momentum. You must stop worrying about daily market fluctuations and start tracking the rhythm of your plan. Every contribution you make and every dividend you reinvest is a log added to the fire of your wealth. The first few years may feel quiet, but beneath the surface, the compounding effect is gathering force. Stay disciplined and keep your engine fueled. Do not let the fear of being behind stop you from starting today. 10 years is a brief period in a lifetime of work, but it is long enough to transform your financial future if you start now. The momentum you build today will be the wind beneath your wings tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the 10-year retirement flight plan. Stay consistent, stay focused, and watch your momentum turn into flight.